Thanks, guys. Thank you to Mr. Farina and for CBC for inviting me back. As Mr. Farina mentioned, this is the third year that I've been back to talk to the Year 12s every year. And it's always an honor to come and speak to you guys. I know it's an important time in your lives when you're transitioning from really kind of what you've known all of your life, really, school, into the next chapter, early adulthood and then adulthood. And as Mr. Farina mentioned, I'm sure that a lot of you are a little bit nervous about that, as you should be, because it's the unknown. So I'm going to give you a bit of a different talk today. I know that throughout the year, you guys have had talks on drugs and alcohol and sexual consent and all, those sorts of typical final year of school talks. My talk is going to be none of that. My talk is going to be very much based on my story and my life experience from when I was sitting exactly where you guys are sitting almost 20 years ago in 2003. Mr. Farina mentioned I went to PAC just up the road here to where I am now and the kind of ebbs and flows and the twists and turns that my life journey has taken. And I'm going to pull out some messages that I think you guys will get some value out of. So the first thing I like to do is I like to get a bit of a feel for you guys first and foremost. So real quick, pop your hand up if you've seen me before, you've watched some of my content, maybe you've heard of Massive Joe's or MJ Fitness or TMJ Apparel. All right, so I'm meeting a lot of, there's a few. Okay, cool. So I'm meeting a lot of you guys for the first time, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I do for those of you who don't know. The second question, Mr. Farina kind of alluded to, some of you guys have a plan and you know what at least the next few years is going to look like, maybe going to university, trade school, pursuing professional sports. Pop your hand up if you've got a plan. Okay, that's most of you. Excellent. And now if you don't have a plan, pop your hand up. Okay, we've got a few as well. So my name's Joseph Mencel. I am the founder, CEO, director of a couple of different companies. The first company is MJ Fitness, which up until April this year was known as Massive Joe's, which is a supplement company. So we deal with importation, distribution, retail, run a bunch of retail stores, website, anything to do with supplements. So protein powders, pre-workouts, those sorts of things is MJ Fitness. I then also have an activewear company called TMJ Apparel, which is a sports activewear company, specifically in workout apparel. So workout apparel, accessories for both guys and girls, that's TMJ Apparel. I personally then, I'm a professional athlete in the International Federation of Bodybuilding in a division called the Men's Physique Division. So I compete all around the world on the pro circuit in the men's physique category of bodybuilding. And through that, I have been involved in the IFBB, is what we call it for short, with promoting and running shows as well. So in South Australia, in Adelaide, I run the International Federation of Bodybuilding here. We're just about to do our 10th show in a few weeks' time down at Brighton Performing Arts Centre, for those of you who are interested in bodybuilding and want to come check it out. I then also run a podcast called the Fitness Times Business Podcast, which is a top 100 iTunes personal development and business development podcast. And through that podcast, one of my little passion projects on the side is I do some business consulting and some personal development mentoring as well. And then in my personal life, I'm married, coming up to 2 years, married to my wife, Amy. And it's been an incredible journey with her thus far. So on the outside, and a lot of people who know my public persona on the outside just see success. They see the companies, they see the competing on the stages all over the world in different countries and winning this and winning that. They see my personal life, I'm happily married, I live in a beautiful house, drive nice cars, all that sort of stuff. People who know me well and people who dig a little bit deeper will know that behind all the extracurricular success and external success is a lot of failure. I've failed many, many more times than I've succeeded. I've had failed businesses. I've had failed academic ventures. I've had failed sporting endeavors. I've had failed relationships. I've had a failed engagement. I've had a failed marriage. I have failed time and time and time again. But I've always found a way to almost turn the failure inside out. It's a bit of a cliche, but effectively take lessons from failures and apply those lessons and go, you know what, if I get another chance at doing that, I might do it a little differently. I might zig when I should have zagged. I might try things a little different, apply those lessons and get better and ultimately succeed. And so there's really three main messages that I want you guys to take out of my talk today. And I'm going to intertwine them with my personal story about how I went from where you guys are to where I am today. The first one is to lean into your curiosity. The second one is around the three fears that you will inevitably confront time and time again and will stand between where you are and where you're trying to go, or who you are and who you're trying to become. And then the third lesson is a little perspective mindset shift that I personally use to deal with the inevitable setbacks that you guys are going to experience throughout your adult life, what I like to call the punches in the face. So I'm going to start with the first lesson, which is to lean into your curiosity. So 2003, I'm at PAC, had a similar auditorium to this and a similar speaker to myself. He was a little bit older than I was in a different story, but he asked a similar question and he said, pop your hand up if you've got a plan and you know what you're going to do. And my hand went straight up. I was like, I got this. I know exactly what I'm doing. Before I got into bodybuilding, I spent most of my life playing basketball. Coming up as a kid and a teenager, and I was a good basketballer. I toured the US a couple of times, played in state teams, and my plan was, I'm going to the US, I'm going into the college system, I'm going to play professional basketball. The goal was to get to the NBA, but I'm playing professional basketball. If it's the NBL, if it's the European League, whatever. That's my plan. I'm doing that. I know the path, and that's where I'm going. Fortunately, my parents had seen that sort of path not work out many more times than it does work out. And so they encouraged me. Obviously, they sent me to PAC, which is a great school, just like CBC is. Encouraged me to do well in school, you know, like don't just put all your eggs in the sports basket. Make sure that you're trying as best you can, you get decent grades. So, you know, if it doesn't go to plan, you've got something else that you can do academically and whatnot. Unfortunately, I listened to them and I studied my butt off in year 12 and got good grades. And it was fortunate because less than 12 months later, I developed 2 stress fractures in my lower back, L5 on S1, right down the bottom of your back. And it ended straight away anything that I was going to do with professional sports, high impact sports. Basketball was like literally from one practice session, it was a practice session that I did the injury, to another practice session, wasn't even a game, over, finished, no more basketball. You can't do this, your body will not do this. And so I was 18 years old at the time. I thought I had everything planned out and I was absolutely devastated. For me, it's like you guys, like you've known a certain thing up until this point in your life. For me, it was school and basketball. And that's all I ever did. You know, played basketball before school, after school, weekends. That was my life. And that came to a halt. And I really didn't know. I went from, I know exactly what I'm going to do, to, man, I got no idea what I'm going to do. No idea. So I lent into my curiosity. And my curiosity led me to Adelaide University, just down the road here, and I enrolled in a couple of degrees. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was like, well, just let me go to uni and see what happens. And fortunately I did, because when I was at uni, I wasn't really too interested in studying because I didn't really know what I was studying, but I was really interested in the gym. I was really interested in working out, and I'd been introduced to working out through basketball. And when I couldn't play basketball anymore, I had to spend more time in the gym to strengthen my back because of the stress fractures. And the more time I spent in the gym, I was like, oh man, like, I wonder what I can do competitively here. You know, like, is there something, you know, weightlifting, strongman competitions, there's bodybuilding, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno. I kind of didn't know too much about it, but I knew enough about it to know that this was an option for me. And so I trained for just over 12 months, went and saw some shows so I could see what it was all about. And entered my first bodybuilding competition in 2005. I was 19, just about to turn 20. I did really well in bodybuilding. And I was like, okay, there might be something here. And that led to me wanting to do really well in bodybuilding. You know, I was like, man, I wonder if I could turn pro in bodybuilding and maybe do something professionally here. Basketball couldn't happen, but maybe this could. And because of that, I started looking into supplements. All right. How many of you guys take some sort of supplement, like a protein, a pre-workout? Yeah, cool. So back then, 2005 was a lot different to 2023 when it comes to supplements. Back then there was just protein and it tasted like wet cardboard, like legit. It was like people weren't using it because it tasted so bad. And I was like, man, there's got to be better products than this. So I started looking online, and in the US at the time, in the early 2000s, which is where a lot of the supplements that you guys would be familiar with today come from, the industry just exploded. There were supplements everywhere. So I started ordering stuff from the US, bringing it in. And so back then, I'd walk up to the uni gym, you know, I'm sipping on it. I got a shaker similar to this. I didn't have the company back then, so I didn't have my logo on it, but I was sipping my pre-workout. Right? No one else had pre-workout at that time. Like, people might have like a shot of coffee, like an espresso or something, but no one had pre-workout. While we're training, everyone's drinking water out of water bottles. I had a water bottle too, but it had this colored stuff in it, amino acids, BCAAs. Right? Post-workout, no one knew anything about like proper post-workout nutrition, protein, carbs, these sorts of things. So I'd have a shaker full of protein, take it to the fountain, shake it up, drink it. The guys that I was training with would go upstairs at Adelaide Uni. The uni bar is on top of what used to be, I'm not sure if it still is. The uni bar was on top of the gym. So they'd go upstairs and have like a schnitzel or a parmigiana and a beer. And they're like, because I was doing well in bodybuilding competitions, like, man, what are you doing? Like, what is this stuff that you're drinking? What is this colored stuff you have while you're training? What is this? Why don't you have a beer and a schnitzel with us? Why are you having this protein powder? And so I started telling them about it, and obviously they were curious as well because my physique was developing too, right? I was building muscle, competing, doing well. And, you know, next time you place an order, can you get me some stuff? I'm like, yeah, I can get you some stuff. It's no problem. I'll be a little supplement dealer. So I started importing from a few products to boxes, from boxes to multiple boxes I was living at home with my parents at the time. So I'm 19, about 20 years old at that point in time, living at my parents' house. My warehouse at the time was a bookshelf in my parents' house that had like one line of pre-workouts, one line of aminos, one line of proteins. And it got to the point where I was having pallets rock up the front of my parents' house with boxes of supplements from the US. Didn't have no forklifts, pallet jacks. I'm like hand unloading the boxes, bringing them into my warehouse, bedroom, bookshelf. Obviously I outgrew that. So I took over the study in my parents' house and then the dining room, and like literally I had supplements everywhere. And it got to the point where I would load up the boot of my car in the morning before uni, drive to Adelaide Uni Gym, Flinders Uni Gym, Uni SA, and I was the guy selling supplements out the back of the boot of his car to gym members all around Adelaide. I thought to myself, man, this is wild. I kind of felt like a drug dealer, I'm not gonna lie, but I was like, this is crazy. And I'd always been interested in e-commerce, right? So I'd always dabbled in like selling stuff back then on eBay. It was very difficult to set up a website back then. There was no Shopify or anything like that. So I used to sell stuff on eBay. I used to sell bracelets and, you know, things that were popular in basketball. I dabbled in selling iPods when they first came out on eBay. And so I kind of went, if I'm selling this much of these supplements just in the universities in Adelaide, man, there's going to be a good market for this nationally. So at the end of 2005, I set up the very first supplement website in the country on eBay. It was just an eBay store. And I called it Massive Joe's because that's what they used to call me at the uni gym. And I started selling supplements online, and business over the next couple of years just exploded. Like it was up. I still haven't seen anything like it to this day in 20 years of running business. And then I remember this really vividly. One of the things I was studying at university was engineering. And so the engineering computer suite used to be called the CAT suite. And I remember I was there at university late one night. I was always at university late because I spent the mornings dropping off supplements. So I was at university late and up in the CAT suite, and I was sitting next to my mate, and he had a computer screen open. And this would have been 2008. And he had this website, and it was called Facebook. He was writing on this wall. And I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, what is this? You should be doing university work. He's writing on Facebook. And he's like, man, this is Facebook. It's this new, it wasn't called social networking back then, but it's this new social site. You can connect with people and so on and so forth. I thought to myself, man, this is a great opportunity for me to get away from eBay, start my own website, and I can use this social network to like meet people and tell them about my website. It was like literally like marketing like I'd never seen before. So I set up my own website, massivejoes.com, set up a Facebook profile called Massive Joe, and I started reaching out to people all over the country and telling them about my website. And that was how I was able to get off eBay to my own website, Massive Joe's. And all of this happened so quickly. By the time I'd finished university, I'd finished with a couple of different degrees and more on that in a second, but this little hobby business had turned into a business that was doing multi-million dollars of turnover, almost like by mistake. And so my first message to you guys, the real take home from this is, if you have a plan, fantastic. And I hope that it goes to plan for you guys. I really do. Don't be so tunnel vision in your plan that you turn your attention away from anything that piques your curiosity, anything that interests you. If you don't have a plan and you're just going, man, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. No idea. Lean into things that pique your curiosity. Lean into things that interest you. Because what can start as like a little seed that no one's ever seen before, and there's no way you can possibly envision that something that you might be interested in can lead to what ultimately could become a career for you, that could change the path of your life. Make sure you keep your eyes open and make sure you lean into your curiosity. If I had never lent into the curiosity to go to university, to try a bodybuilding competition, to get supplements, to set up an eBay store, to use social media to drive traffic to my own website, my life would look completely different to the way it does today. So lean into your curiosity can often lead to some of the best things that will ever happen to you. I got a question for you guys. As you close the door on this 17, 18-year-old chapter of your life and you open the next one, what scares you the most? What are you most afraid of? What do you got?
Failing, I guess.
Failing, fear of failure, yep.
Disappointing my parents.
Okay. Other people's expectations, opinions, yep. Let's get one more. Yep, in the middle here. Responsibilities, meaning you're afraid of what you're going to be responsible for, and that's because you're not really too sure how to handle it. So it's a little bit of doubt. Okay. That's really good because you guys have literally gone 1, 2, 3 around the 3 fears that I've personally experienced, and the 3 fears through a lot of the work that I've done is, a lot of what I do is people facing, right? Whether it's retail stores, customer service, through my business consultancy, my podcast. And I've had a lot of discussions with people, and the common theme, there are 3 fears that everyone experiences that stands between where you are and where you're trying to go, and who you are and who you're trying to become. And the 3 fears, you guys nailed them, 1, 2, 3. The first one is the fear of failure. The second one is the fear of other people's opinions. And the third one is, technically it's the fear of inadequacy, but I like to call it self-doubt because that's how it manifests. The fear of failure is the first one that come up, and everyone, doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, everyone experiences fear of failure. And it's an interesting one because it's really, in Western culture, it's something that we've been taught to fear. And the reason why I know that is because there's a lot of evidence that proves that before you've been taught to fear failure, you don't actually fear failure at all, right? Who's seen a baby walk before, right? Go from crawling to walking. Maybe you guys got younger siblings, younger cousins, right? What does the baby do when they go from crawling to walking? They try and take a few steps, eat dirt, right? Stand back up, a few more steps, okay? Eat dirt again. How many times does that happen? How many times do they fail before they finally figure out how to walk? What about something that's probably more recent? Who knows how to ride a bike here? Everyone knows how to ride a bike, right? You guys remember? Oh, maybe there's a few of you who don't, but we can teach you. You guys remember when you first started riding a bike? What happened, right? You don't know how to ride a bike innately. You get on the bike, you take a few pedals, you eat dirt, you scrape your elbow, your knee, get back up, get back on the bike, take a few more pedals, right? You fail, you take the lessons, you apply them, and eventually you learn how to ride the bike. Unfortunately, it's probably gonna take confronting failure head on for you guys at some point in your adult life to remind yourself of that fact, because you've been taught to fear it so deeply that you almost think like you've never known anything different. And for me, one of the biggest failures in my sporting career, in the sporting side of my life, was 2016 in a bodybuilding show. How many of you have seen a bodybuilding show before? In person or online? Okay. You guys know any bodybuilders by name? Well, who's that? Well, I didn't hear that. Is that one of you guys? Those of you who have seen it would know. Those of you who haven't, competing in a bodybuilding show is, man, it's one of the most confronting things you can do, right? You're standing on a stage, elevated stage, in front of an auditorium of people. If it's a big bodybuilding show, it's 500 to 1,000 people, right? You're standing, if you're competing in bodybuilding, you've got budgie smugglers on, little trunks. If you compete in men's physique like I do, you've got board shorts on, and you're being judged by strangers on how you look and how you present on stage. There's nowhere to hide, right? If you've cheated on your diet, it's gonna show. If you've skipped your cardio sessions, if you've skipped your workouts, if you haven't put 100% effort into every workout, the guy standing next to you is gonna beat you. There's nowhere to hide. It's incredibly confronting. And in 2016, I took a situation that was already confronting and added a few layers to it. Because what had happened a few years before I won the state title, I'd gone and placed second at the Nationals. The year before I won the state title again, I went to the Amateur Olympia and placed third at the Amateur Olympia in 2016. A few weeks earlier, I won the state title again, and this was the national show. And it was like, this is my time now to win the national championship and earn my pro card, turn pro in the sport, become a professional men's physique athlete. And because I thought that's what was gonna happen, and it should have happened, I decided to document the whole prep, the whole competition prep on it was the Massive Joe's YouTube channel at the time, now the MJ Fitness YouTube channel. Back then we had 80, 90,000 subscribers. And so I had an episode per week leading up to the national championship where I was gonna win and I was gonna turn pro. And so the day of the competition comes, and not only did I not win the show, but I didn't even place at the show. I wasn't even in the top 5, right? I completely bummed out. And from an athletic perspective, it hit me right in the face. That was failure, right? There's nowhere to hide. I couldn't sweep it under the carpet. There was 1,000 people there, right? And then 10,000 people watching every episode on the YouTube channel. There's nowhere to hide, I failed. I was like, man, this doesn't feel very nice. This is something that I was, I feared my entire adult life. And the interesting thing, there were two interesting things that happened. The first interesting thing that happened is when I confronted that failure with nowhere to hide, I couldn't sugarcoat it, I couldn't push it to the side, I had to go, I tried, I failed, that's it. It's black and white. I did what we innately know we do with failure, is I competed, I was on stage, it was the last division, so I was on stage 10 o'clock that night. Got off stage about 10:30. I went to each of the judges and I said, let me hear it. Give me some feedback. What did I do wrong? How did I mess this up? A few people I knew in the audience that were there supporting me, I went to them. I said, nowhere for me to hide, don't sugarcoat it. What did I mess up? Like, tell it to me straight. Took the feedback. I went back to my hotel apartment at the time. Couldn't sleep, right? 'Cause I'm thinking. 12:30, midnight, went to the gym, Anytime Fitness over in Sydney, and I started putting in work. I literally took the feedback, learned the lessons, and started applying the lessons 2 hours after I failed at that competition. And I applied them every day after that for the entire year. I came back in 2017, the year later, won the state title, won the national title, went to Oceania, won the Oceania title, unanimous champion, next men's physique professional athlete. Because I took the lessons and I applied the lessons and I continue to apply the lessons, figure out how to get better, how to do things better, and eventually got the success that I was trying to get the year earlier. And so when you guys find yourself wanting to try something, wanting to do something, and you experience this fear of failure, this fear of what if I do this and it doesn't work out? What if I do this and I don't get the result that I want to get from this? I encourage you guys to always remember that you failed before, many, many times. It may not be top of mind because it doesn't feel very nice, right? So we kind of push it to the side. But you failed, and like you do every time, you take the lessons, you apply them. Ultimately, you're a learner. You can apply those lessons, you can get better. So failure is not something to be feared. Don't go looking for it because it doesn't feel very good. No one likes failing. But when it inevitably happens, turn your mindset into, what can I learn from this situation? How can I apply this to get better? The second interesting thing that happened was when I got to work and I started applying the lessons straight away, I realized that it wasn't actually the failure itself that I was most afraid of, right? It felt really bad, but it's kind of just dust it off, all right, get to work. What I was really afraid of was this second fear right here, expectation, fear of other people's opinions. What I was really afraid of was, what are all the people in the audience gonna say? What are they gonna think? What about when this episode goes live? I can't bury the series. This episode's gone live on the YouTube channel. People are gonna see it. What are they gonna write in the comments? When I get back home to Adelaide, what are my friends gonna say? What's my family gonna say? What's my partner gonna say? That is what I was really afraid of. And this one, I'm so happy you brought this up because this is huge, especially for us men, and especially for us men who have come through the schooling system and had the privilege and the opportunity of coming to a school like CBC. And it's a big one because of this. Go to school, get good grades, or if you're not academically inclined, try your best. If you're academically inclined, go to university. If you're not, pursue a sport or pursue a trade. Get a good job. Meet a life partner. Buy a house. Have some kids and settle down. Who's heard that before? Is that the general expectation across the board? Sure was when I was sitting where you guys were. And this, for me, in 2012, so we're going to fast forward 5 years. We're going to go back 5 years from 2017, was really where this came to a head for me. So I'd finished university by that time, and actually, funnily enough, I completed both of the degrees that I enrolled in, right? So I had 2 degrees. I was at uni with 2 degrees for 8 years, right? So I also had over $100,000 in HECS debt associated with my degrees, right? Because I took out a loan to go to university. I'd managed to score myself an internship at an oil and gas company here in Adelaide called Santos, really big oil and gas company. And I had a pretty good foot in the door to a career in the oil and gas industry as an engineer. And then in my personal life as well, I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, right? So we'd met each other. I went to an all-boys school, obviously PAC, but we'd met each other through basketball. And we'd been together, at that point, it would have been 10 years. And we were engaged, right? And so I had all of that going on over here, right? It was the conventional path, right? I'd been to school, I got good grades, went to uni, life partner, just about got this good job. That's the path. But then over here, I mentioned to you guys what I did in my spare time at university with Massive Joes. So I had this business, right? Was doing some good numbers sales-wise. Wasn't particularly profitable, but that's cool, right? Had it over here. And then I'd also been competing in bodybuilding shows and doing quite well. Wasn't quite professional level back in 2012, but I was like, yeah, I've probably got what it takes to get there. So on one hand, the conventional path. What do you reckon the pressure was around going down this path? It was huge, right? Friends, family, society, culture. That's the path, and it was right there, right? I could literally touch it. Here, risky. Probably just, you've had a bit of fun there, but it's probably time to push that to the side, and this is the path you're going down. And I remember at that point in my life, I was 27 years old, and there was so much pressure. Not even externally, internally as well. I'd spent 8 years at university. I had $100,000 in debt to pay back for my degrees. And, but I had this over here, and this was set my soul on fire, right? This was the sort of stuff that got me up every morning before my alarm, kept me up late at night when I should have been sleeping. This was the passion. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I got a decision to make here. And there's a lot of pressure of other people's opinions to go here. But I'm going here. I'm doing this. I'm going over here. And what helped me make that decision, and this is really the take home that I want you guys to take whenever the fear of other people's opinions stands between you and what you want to do and who you're trying to become, was I thought to myself, you know what? And I still do this to this day. When I'm approaching the end of my life, right? Hopefully I live to 110, 120, but when I get there, approach the end of my life, what's going to matter the most to me? Am I going to be concerned, or am I going to be happy with the fact that I listened to what other people wanted me to do and I satisfied them and their opinions and I kept them happy? Or is it going to be most important to me that I did what I was passionate about, that I pursued my dreams, that I did what set my soul on fire, that I lived life on my terms? Whenever I ask myself that question, I always come back to that particular decision. And I went over here, right? And I want you guys to always remember that you have one life. This is not a dress rehearsal, right? You don't get another chance at this. You have to live life on your terms. you have to think about, at the end of it, what's going to matter the most to you. And I guarantee you guys, you're going to want to have pursued what you were passionate about, and you're going to want to have said yes to the things that set your soul on fire. And even if you disappoint people, even if you don't meet other people's expectations in the short term, it's going to be more important to you in the long term. Fear of inadequacy, self-doubt, the third fear that stands between who you are and who you're trying to become. Do you guys think when I started my first business, Massive Joe's, MJ Fitness, that I knew anything about selling supplements? Nothing. Do you think I knew anything about running a website? Do you think I knew anything about using social media when I literally stumbled across Facebook in 2008 to build a business? My first ever bodybuilding show, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what the poses were. I was like, yeah, you just get up there and flex your biceps. Wow, I didn't know how to hit a side chest, a back double biceps pose. I had no idea. My podcast, when I started my podcast, my very first business consulting client, my very first mentoring client, every single thing that I do in my life at the moment, when I first started, I was a beginner. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. I felt completely inadequate, and I doubted my ability to do what it was I wanted to do. And that's always the way it's going to be. You can't possibly have the experience, you can't possibly have the skills to do something that you're doing for the first time. You develop the skills by doing it, figuring it out, failing, learning your lessons, applying those lessons, and getting better along the way. When you guys come up against this fear of inadequacy or this self-doubt, where you ask yourself, you say, man, I really want to try this, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Or I really want to do this, but I just really don't even know where to start. Do you guys know what the antidote is to that fear? What you have to grab with both hands? Anyone know what it is? It's one word, real easy. It's courage. It's courage to accept the fact that you're doing something for the first time. It's courage to understand that you don't have the skills or the experience to possibly know how to do it. It's courage, stand back for this. It's courage to take one step and then take your foot and put that in front of that foot. Learn some things along the way, and then take this foot and put it in front of this foot, and then take the next step after that, and then take the next step after that. And understand that with every step you take towards what it is you're trying to do, every step you take towards who it is you're trying to become, you're actually going to build more courage along the way. So whenever you guys come up against the fear of inadequacy, whenever you come up against self-doubt, I encourage you to think about, am I going to be brave in this situation? Am I going to exert courage in this situation? Feels really bad, feels really yucky, feels like I should, you know what, turn my back on it and go back in this direction where it feels comfortable and I know what I'm doing. Understand that that's part of the process, and understand that the only way through it is with courage. My final message for you guys today is really encapsulating the fact that if you've got plans, that's fantastic. There's not many guarantees in life, but I can tell you from my personal experience and from my life experience witnessing this in other people is that the one thing I can guarantee you guys is that your plans are not going to go to plan. Can have it all laid out, right? You can have the path. If you're a professional, you want to be a pro athlete, you might get injured like I did. If you're an academic and you want to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or one of these common professions, elite professions, I should say, something could come and disrupt it. We're in the middle of a massive AI disruption at the moment. We might not have doctors in 10 years. Who knows? In your personal life, you might have met someone already. You're going to spend the rest of your life with this person, and then something happens in the relationship and throws you for six. I've been there as well myself, multiple times. I like to call these life's punches in the face, because you're unexpected and they just come and they punch you in the face. And you have no control over them, but they're guaranteed to happen. And when they do happen, there's two things that you can control. There's two things that you get to decide. The first thing is whether the punch to the face is something good or something bad. The thing doesn't care, right? The injury, my lower back injury, it just happened. You didn't know if it was good or bad. We go back a couple of years to 2020, pandemic, shut the world down. Good or bad? Pandemic didn't care, it just happened. It's up to you to perceive whether these punches to the face are good or bad. You get to decide. The second thing you get to decide is whether these punches to the face are happening to you or happening for you. It's a very slight distinction. When I say happening to you, it's effectively like you've been king hit, right? Like you couldn't see it coming and you're just a leaf in the wind and it's just punching you and you're just falling here and then punching you here and you're falling. There's nothing you can do about it. It's happening to you. Or you can perceive it as happening for you, meaning that no one likes to get punched in the face, but perhaps it's pushing you in the direction that you're truly supposed to go. You know, perhaps that professional sporting career that didn't work out was actually pushing you in the direction that you are actually supposed to go. For me personally, that injury when I was 18 years old felt like the worst thing could ever happen. And it felt like it happened to me. It was bad and it happened to me. But 20 years later, I'm able to look back at that and I go, man, that was actually the best thing that could have ever happened for me at that stage of my life, because it's led to what I do professionally today. It's led to my marriage and meeting my wife. It's led to me being here today and speaking to you guys. Everything that's good that I have in my life, it started at that seed back when I was 18 years old. That felt like bad happening to me, but it was actually good happening for me. I just couldn't see it yet. How many of you have heard of a company called Apple? Everyone knows Apple, right? Who's got an iPhone? No, actually, who's got a Samsung? Yeah, okay. How many of you have heard of Steve Jobs? Everyone knows Steve Jobs, right? The late Steve Jobs. How many of you have listened to or watched a speech that Steve Jobs did at Stanford University for their commencement? You got one here? Yeah, maybe, yes. You might have heard quotes from it before. So most of you haven't, and I highly recommend you do it. It's a short speech. It goes for 10, maybe 15 minutes, somewhere in there. And it's effectively Steve telling the story, obviously before he passed away, telling the story of the early days of Apple, right? So everyone knows Steve Jobs started Apple with Steve Wozniak, you know, built it into this company. And then if you don't know the Apple story, in a nutshell, effectively what happened was they went public with the company. They brought in this board of directors. Steve went and hired this CEO who was at the time he was the CEO of Pepsi, the soft drink company, brought him in thinking, you know, this is going to be awesome. We're going to make the biggest company in the world. And one of the first things the CEO did was fired Steve Jobs, right? Knocked him out. And he had the support of the board to do it as well. Imagine that. Imagine you start what has now become literally the biggest company in the world. You start it, with your mate in the garage. You build it to a point where you publicly list it. You're literally a multi-millionaire by the time you're in your late 20s. You bring in some people that you think are going to help you take it to the $1 billion mark, and the first thing they do is kick you out of your company. I bet Steve thought that was pretty bad, hey? I bet he thought that was happening to him, not for him. Steve then goes on to say, he says, at the time, it felt like something bad that was happening to me, but it led to me starting Pixar. It led to me starting a computing company called Next. It led to they ran Apple into the ground when Steve left, right? And Apple, I don't know if many of you know this, but Apple, the company we know today, the multi-trillion-dollar company, was 90 days away from bankruptcy in the 80s. Because these guys took Steve out, they thought they were doing the right thing, this board of directors, this new CEO, and they just hammered this company into the ground. And it was 90 days away from not existing, like literally going out of business. And one of the things that happened was they bought Next. They bought Steve's new computer company, and through that acquisition, they bought Steve Jobs back into the company. So Steve Jobs comes back into the company after they'd almost destroyed it. He goes, man, this product suite is ridiculous. We need to simplify everything. We're bringing it back, and we're going to launch something called the iPod. I think at the time it was 1,000 songs in your pocket was the tagline. And then we're going to launch the MacBook. And then we're going to launch the iPad. And then we're going to launch the iPhone. And the rest is history as we know it today, and everything else that Apple's gone on to create. And Steve says in this speech, he said, at the time when I was removed from my company, there is absolutely no way that I could have foreseen what was going to happen over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It was impossible, right? I could not have joined those dots looking forward. I could only have joined the dots looking back. And that's his takeaway message. You can't join the dots looking forward. You can only ever join them looking back. And he says, to finish this speech off, he says, you have to have faith in something that the dots are going to join. Some people call it religion. Some people call it karma. Some people call it spirituality. What I like to call it is adopting the mindset of, I can't see how things are going to play out. I can't join the dots looking forward, but I choose to believe that no matter what happens, it's something happening good, and it's something happening for me. And one of my favorite mindsets, mantras, quotes, I say, only good things happen for me. And I've spoken a little bit about guarantees and what is guaranteed and not guaranteed in this life. I can guarantee you guys this: if you also adopt the mindset that only good things happen for me, only good things will happen for you too. Thank you, guys.